Welcome to the raw and uncensored Ambitchious Podcast. During our time here together, I will be instilling all of the strength, power, and determination you will need to use the very stones thrown at you to build your ultimate empire. We will redefine the word bitch from the derogatory to the acronym being in total control of herself. So let's adjust our crowns and prepare to live life ambitiously. Oh, yeah, here I am, the original HBIC, Katie motherfucking Boyd. And on today's episode of the Ambitchious Podcast, I got a tasty motherfucking treat for you. And it's my astrologer, Christian Bradley West. And some of you who are on social know him as the Country Clairvoyant. And CBW, Christian Bradley West, is a creative professional with a background in fine art and exercise science. His art is included in the collections of the High Museum of Art, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Georgia, and the Sir Elton John Photography Collection, as well as numerous private and corporate collections. He has recently shifted his creative energy to writing with an emphasis on spiritual expression and is in the process of completing 2 novels. You can find him most days posting funny spiritual memes on his Instagram account, The Country Clairvoyant, or in nature, petting moss. You guys, this was the most, I don't even know. It was fun. It was titillating. I was literally flicking my bean the entire time that we were talking. And I had so many spirit-gasms during this podcast. And I know that you will also be flicking your bean while you're having spiritual orgasms, listening to the Country Clairvoyant, aka Christian Bradley West. And without further ado, let's get into the Ambitchious Podcast with the Country Clairvoyant. Hey, Ambitches, I am so excited to bring to you today Christian Bradley West, aka the Country Clairvoyant, aka Cunty the Clairvoyant. And we're going to have the most incredible freaking conversation. I've been waiting to have Christian on here for a hot minute, and our stars have aligned, and here we are. I'm so excited that you're here, Christian.
I'm excited to be here.
Oh my God. The girls in Ambitchious Land are literally like flicking their fucking beans right now, thinking about how exciting this is to have you on the podcast. So thank you for taking time out of your life to do this.
I'm excited. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Everything aligned. It was perfect.
So I love how on your Instagram page, because that's actually how I found you and I started doing astrology stuff with you, is through your Instagram, because you literally have, in my opinion, the funniest, darkest, fucked up humor that has to do with spirituality. And you call yourself an intuitive luminary, a hillbilly hocus pocus, and a country fried kundalini. So where did all the Country Clairvoyant stuff come from? I love it.
So, it's funny. It came as an inspiration. I just was like, and then I resisted it for 6 months because nothing's worth doing if you don't resist it, right?
Of course.
And so I resisted it, and then I just felt compelled in a very intense way to start making spiritual memes. This was in the end of 2017.
Yes.
So, and to offer my intuitive abilities to whoever felt that they needed it, and that was kind of like feeling like I was getting naked in front of people, actually. I was like, wait, what? Like, so it was people knew I was witchy and whatnot, but I was definitely stepping out of the broom closet in a big way.
Yes. Spooky. So you were like, I'm going to just freaking make this Instagram account. I'm going to post like these crazy spiritual memes, and like, hopefully it will get to the people that it gets to. And literally it has gotten to many, many people all across the world.
Well, and I wanted to be a little subversive. I like, we started talking about before we started recording about the whole love and light thing. I am okay going into the darkness. The darkness to me, that's as we said, instead of shadow work, it's shadow play.
Yes.
Let's be funny about it. Let's lighten up the mood. And a lot of spiritual teachers talk about investing humor into what we do. Now, a lot of modern day coaches and people don't. A lot of people are like, God, their sense of humor is so remarkably absent.
Exactly.
And to be so serious about everything. And I get it. There's a lot of very difficult, challenging things and a lot of suffering going on in the world. And it doesn't mean we can't find laughter in the midst of the pain.
Yeah. And that's why I fell in love with you, because I'm like, if someone's going to do my astrology and do like my natal chart and like really I'm going balls to the wall, I want them to be hilarious and fun, because like you said, it can be boring. And a lot of people in the spiritual community, because we are in the spiritual community, you and I, it's so funny. And I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I feel like quote unquote spiritual people are sometimes the meanest and most attacking people in like the world. Like, I don't understand it. Have you experienced that?
Absolutely. I think it also goes back, a lot of people come from some spiritual background, a lot of Westerners being Christianity, and they just carry over God and start calling it the universe. They just take all the authority and transfer it into different language. And that means that their biases and their prejudices come with it.
Yes. So true. 100%. I've noticed, like, when I really started to come out of the broom closet, as you call it, and I started really embracing like my spooky side and really being who I truly was placed on this earth to be, a lot of spiritual people like really came for me, because I, like you, like to make jokes, and I'm really I'm harsh in a lot of ways, and I know that about myself. But it doesn't mean that I'm not as effective as the person that's like love, light, peace, hair grease,
peace, hair grease. I mean, absolutely. And that's there's there's 300,000 whatever doors to enlightenment, or paths through it to enlightenment, many paths, one destination, which is just wholeness. So, my favorite meme is the one where they show the bondage room of that. Like there's, all these doors, all these, ways to enlightenment, and I show bondage. So, the humor, right? Or show the BDSM dungeon. That's how I feel sometimes. But, I mean, and also I think in the spiritual community, we make suffering too sacred. I think that's a little thing that I'm glad I'm over at this point and if you want to make your sacred suffering or your suffering sacred, then do that. But don't
put it on the other people. Like, you have to suffer and do what I say is your way to go into the next level or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, we want to honor our path. Obviously, I've been through a lot of suffering, but, I like walking, as I say, the path of the line between the sacred and the profane.
Yes.
And it's all the same. It's all the same shit.
It truly is.
Yeah.
Now, do you feel like you going through a lot of things in your life is what kind of brought you to the place that you are now as the Country Clairvoyant and doing all the things that you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, I say we have to be everywhere we've been to be where we are. So, I always had this sense of spirituality, or this, really, we can define it in my younger years as hunger, right? To connect to something. So I invested into Christianity because that was offered towards me. Although as a kid, I would talk to people who were more aware of Eastern religions, and that they would say that's a very Eastern philosophy. Where did you learn that? And I mean, this is me being like 10 years old. And I was like, I don't know. I just feel this way. So, I brought that to the table as well. But really, of course, when I came out, as a gay human at 18, I lost most of my church friends except for one. All these things shifted. So it forced me, so to speak, into the path of exploring different paths,
right?
Different answers, different things, and it was serious for a while, here and there, but I had to actively find the joy, if you want to say it like that, or the laughter in all of it. Because I learned that you can be a messy bitch and be a Buddha at the same time.
I love it. it.
You don't have to be one or the other.
Right.
You can embrace all of it. And that is where the wholeness comes in. And that's where the wisdom is.
Yes, I agree. I loved your meme the other day, and it was like a carousel is like, is this a mudra or is this a gang sign?
Yeah, right.
And I was
Well,
literally dying. Like I was like, oh my God, because I posted a meme of yours once and it was like a nun or some kind of saint and was doing a gang sign. And
yeah,
I just thought that was so freaking funny. And
yeah.
so many people came for me like, do you know that's the Crips or the Bloods? Or I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I don't live in South Central LA, honey. I live in the boondocks of East Cuddy bumfuck New Hampshire. I don't
But
like I don't care.
but they also, it looks like they're mudras. I mean, they do.
It's
So
so true.
yeah, so I mean, it's really fascinating how, there's a lot of overlap. And nothing's new under the sun. Let's
Nope.
face it. Like,
Absolutely.
gang signs and mudras are gonna look the same because you're using hand signs, and
Yes.
they're probably also related to, yeah, to what's the word that's came to sign language.
Yes, yes,
I mean,
100%.
so yeah, nothing's new, but you can look at it through and connect dots. That's really what I love to do, is connect the dots. That's a really good way of being funny, is connecting
You're the best.
dots.
You're the
Well,
best
thank
at connecting
you.
the dots because you'll post something on social and I will be like, how freaking smart is this? Because you have to be smart to be funny. You have to be, honestly, you have to be kind of a genius to be funny like you are.
Well, thank you. Well, you have to allow for, I'd say genius is just the allowance for things, allowance for whatever. I think that's true for any person, Albert Einstein to Da Vinci, to anybody who's considered a genius. You just don't shut any doors.
Yes.
So from my perspective, anyone can be a genius if you just drop your judgments, get a little silly as well, allow for the insanity or what people be on the fringe of things. I think that's a big part of it. Being a queer person and being forced into the margins has really allowed me to look at things from a different perspective. And again, it kind of forced me to in some capacity. Not,
Yes.
I don't know if I would have consciously chosen it because it wasn't
Right.
comfortable. But yeah, you got to look at it from the sidelines and look at everyone in their doing their shit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So obviously I know what you specialize in because you're my astrologer and we've had, sessions before and I absolutely die for them. But tell all the HBICs out there in Ambitchious Land, like, what is your specialty? So like if they want to hire you to do their astrology, what does that mean? Because a lot of people don't know.
Yeah. So my intuition really is the thing. I just seem to be able to pick up on things and know shit. As you know.
Do. Yep.
And so that happens a lot. But the astrology helps to channel it, right? A card just helps to channel itself. So I do love doing the astrology because it's a map, right? It's all there in one circle. So, we get your birthday, we get your birth time, we get your location. I do read for people who don't have that. Again, that is, as long as you have your birthday, but I even have people that don't have that. So we can't always do the astrology with that.
Yes.
But, but if we do have the basic birthday, even starting there, we can look at the transits for that day and see where you are. And of course, all of it just represents energy, right?
Yes.
For anyone out there listening, like the planets, their archetypes, they all represent something. And so it just helps you tune in. Like Saturn is one of my favorites. He's the BDSM person. He's authority, right? Exactly. Saturn daddy. It's authority on authority, right? Like that's Saturn right there. And Jupiter is always something expansive or Jupiter likes to go overboard, right? On things sometimes, especially depending on the sign. So, we just look at where that is in your chart and how, again, connecting those dots, how everything connects and what's going on and how you're, what's the fuckery in your life? What's the weather? So we also look at what's going on now, as you know, and see where it's all going. And then for me, there's just a really strong dose of intuition. I have my teacher who taught me a lot of things say I'm not an astrologer, I'm just really intuitive. And I don't disagree with that. Yeah. I just can look at the chart and then it's like things just start filtering in.
Yeah. And the labels just keep us small. Because if you're like, I'm just an astrologer, then where's the intuition? Where's the room for like, spirit to come in and all these different things? I agree with you 100%.
Well, and I think that's limited me to some degree. It was a conscious choice, though. I wanted to throw everything out there. I didn't want to be like, well, I'm just going to curate an astrology account, because I probably could have grown really big if I only did astrology in the beginning.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, we're going to do a little astrology. And I've limited most of my astrology memes to whatever season we're in. So we're in Scorpio. So I'll post Scorpio things, right? So
I'm here for the Scorpio.
Well, me too. It's one of my favorite energies.
Me too.
So, I decided that I would also talk about trauma in relationship to our journey, because it's a big part of it, the psychology behind certain things, and also be goofy with it and look at it. And like one of my favorite memes recently was like a tunnel going underneath a bridge, and it looked, super sketch and sus. And it said free hugs in the arrow.
I saw that.
And it was me confusing, my need for safety, with also my need for danger, type of thing. And so, I mean, I like incorporating all of that into it. And so I'm a little all over the place. But by the way, it's very conscious. I'm all over the place on purpose. Right?
I know. Like, I remember the first time you read me and you were like, I'm really sorry if I'm all over the place. And I was like, honey, I am picking up what you're putting down, because I'm the same as you. Like, I can get wild, but it's only because spirit is like working through me. And I'm like so excited to tell you what is coming through,
Yeah. Well, and then, as you know, we narrow it down to some, so speaking of the sessions, normally the first half is all over the place. And then we start to narrow it down into some form of action, right? What are the steps you can take? So I don't like showing up for people and just being like, well, I'm going to tell you about things you already know, because most people already know about who they are through their birth chart and things like that. So I'm like, let's talk about like maybe some things you don't know. Right, as well, and maybe dive into some of the trauma. So I get a lot of people, and so I look at the chart to see what could be holding you back, as you know. And then what we do is we come up with an action plan. Like, what do you do? Are we going to look at your values? Are we going to look at your needs? Are we going to look at what's the next step in your creative adventure? And go in that direction. And everyone gets homework, because, as you know, we need homework. It's not called a spiritual practice by accident. We need to practice. As you know, my background is in personal training. I was an exercise scientist. So, I've taken a lot of what I've learned from that. And what people don't know is there's a lot of psychology in personal training, because we're not just changing the body, we're rewiring the mind and remapping the mind along with the body in order for the person to be healthier and on multiple levels. So there's a lot of psychology. In the past, we called it behavior modification. I don't necessarily like that word anymore. I like just more behavior awareness and the capability of redirecting those behaviors. And so that's what we do in a session too, as you know. Like, we look at what are some of the behaviors that might be impeding your progress, because I get a ton of creative humans, a ton of entrepreneurs, a ton of writers, a ton of artists. And I love it, by the way, of course, because I understand all of these things. And everyone who comes to me, there's two things that are happening. They're letting go of something and they're up-leveling, and the letting go really comes in the recognition, right, of those patterns, behaviors, and then replacement, something else. And there's the upgrade, right? Because I say, if you draw a line in a circle, you call it end, it's also the beginning. So, you can't have one without the other. So everyone who comes at me is at that point. There is something that is coming through for them, and they're hitting a new level always.
When I first did my first session with you, I remember, and we had talked about this before we got on, so I'm not going to tell everybody what it is. Only you and I know. But you had said something to me about what I was going to do going forward with my career, and I was like, Christian, please, child, that is not happening, honey. And then today, before we started recording, I told him, and he's just like laughing his ass off, because he's like, I told you, bitch, like I told you, and I was like, oh my God, you're so freaking right. But just because it's something that maybe we're not looking at, or maybe we don't desire at the moment, doesn't mean it's not the right thing for our next up-levelment.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean it's all comfy cozy either.
Oh, comfy cozy. Well, that's the thing. I want it to be as comfortable as possible for people. I like that because research shows that we don't really learn in a space of trauma drama, right? Where we're activated because literally there are parts of our brain that malfunction and shut down.
Yeah.
But how can we find the comfort in the discomfort? Right? Like, how can we find a little, which is where the self-care comes in, right? Where the ritual comes in. I'm going to light the candle. I'm going to burn the incense. I'm going to take the bath. I'm going to read the book. I'm going to become still. I'm going to meditate. If we can find the stillness of that space within the perceived chaos or the changes and the discomfort. So what research really shows is we don't ever leave our comfort zone. Nope. This is something I really want to teach and talk about to a lot of people out there in the world is we don't have to leave our comfort zone. That's not what we do. What we end up doing is we carry it with us and we go to the edge of the comfort zone and it's like a bubble and we slowly expand it. So we're expanding. So we get comfortable in our talents, in our abilities, in our consciousness, in our practice. And it's within that space that we can, like the Fool card in Tarot, we get our knapsack, right? We gather our tools, we get everything we need, and then we embark.
Ooh, right? I have literal chills from you saying this right now because, we always say like nothing good comes from a comfort zone, but I love how you're like, no, you're just
tired of that.
Listen, and you know what, Christian, I'm the first one. I'm like the worst. I always say that because I deal with a lot of people who have such faulty programming and they're so deeply entrenched in their limiting beliefs in their story. So I get like, because I'm like, I'm Kali,
we want to leave. We want to clear out the comfort zone is what we want to do.
Yes.
Clear it out of the trash of our conditioning, the trash of the trauma, all of that, so that we can look at our space and go, how am I going to redecorate?
Yes.
Right. And then we go out and we get things to redecorate the space and
we go to spiritual home goods.
Exactly. Right. And thank you very much. We're going to be the spiritual Maxinistas.
Yes.
And, and we get what we require for the comfort. And then that's when we can expand.
I love that. That's
when we go bigger. So a lot of people that come to me, what we do is say, okay, let's find the tool. Okay, you're in demo day. Let's say that, right? Like you're having a tower moment for people that know Tarot out there. Like, for people that don't know, like the tower moment is when like things are falling apart, right? But it's demo day. So I'm like, let's go get the sledgehammer. What do you want to rebuild?
My nipples are so hard right now because I love the tower. I love death and rebirth. It's my fave.
Yeah. And so what do we need to get rid of? And then rebuild. So the tower, the whole structure is not destroyed, but a piece of it's destroyed, right? Through insight, through lightning. That's Uranus, that's Aquarius energy. So it's like the insights come and, oh my gosh, my brain is suddenly over exploding. I like to say with crown chakra orgasms, right? And so we're having those crown chakra orgasms and it's like it's shaking shit up, right? Because that's what orgasms do. And it moves us. And so we do that and then all of a sudden we come out of it and we look and we're in the rubble, right? We're like, well, what am I going to rebuild? I mean, what bricks am I going to keep? What am I going to do? So it's important to have the food we need, the nourishment we need. And that's part of the comfort, right? It's hard to do anything if we're starving. So we want to, right?
Yes.
So we want to find the food. We want to nourish ourselves. And then in that nourishment, that's what we're doing today. You and I having this discussion, nourishing whoever needs this information, right? To go forward, to assist in becoming comfortable in the uncomfortable. But know that and that's what we do, like I said, through the meditation, through the practice, and then we can carry that out and we can push. And I love the fact that pushing on the comfort zone, because if we're comfortable within our skins, within our bodies, there's nothing we can't do.
So true. I think so. My clients from all across the globe, when they see the tower card or they see like the death coming, right?
Yeah.
They shit a purple Twinkie, honey. They are like, no. And I actually, after 20 plus years of doing this work, and I think you could probably attest this too, when I see the tower card in Tarot, when I know that like, oh shit, like if I don't put down this bag of dead fucking bodies that I'm dragging around with me, I'm never going to be able to go to the next level. I get excited now. And I wish, what would be your best advice for like when that tower moment comes? How should we embrace it so it is not as uncomfortable?
So be really honest with yourself. I say I'm not a necromancer. So anything that's dead, I'm not going to bring back to life.
Right.
But I do know, so if that's a creative project, if that's a relationship, if that's a pattern that's trying to live within me through my fear or my shame or my grief, so what my perception is that we want to get clear on how we're operating, what's going on, what are the tools that we have. For me, when I was very younger and I was still using the 4 agreements, was always a big tool to start off with.
That's old school shit. Still
Yeah.
good though. Still good.
He is still on the number on like he's still top 5.
Yeah.
It's been top 5 best-selling books ever within the self-help community.
For good reason, honestly.
Yeah.
It's so simple. If you just follow those 4 things, like your life will be exponentially better.
Well, and the first one is be impeccable with your word, which I say be honest, be honest, be honest, be honest. He says you don't need another agreement. You make that one agreement. You're honest with yourself. That's it. So I think when you're going through that moment, our inclination is potentially to disassociate, to redirect our attention away from it, to run from the pain and try and find something pleasurable, right? Through the pain pleasure cycle. And so if we are in that discomfort, what we want to do, I would say, it's very Capricorn of me, is the obstacle is the way. Yes. Go toward what the difficulty is. And that's really a big part of the trauma healing, is the assumption is I need to run away from the discomfort of whatever the pain is. When really in therapy, the therapist helps you gently turn toward it.
Yes.
Right. So, but we can learn to do this within ourselves. We can learn to say, okay, I'm feeling discomfort. I'm having an emotional reaction. I'm struggling regulating, because the tower can be that too. And the tower can be something very physical, be something internal. It can be both. And so we want to, depending on the other cards around there, or depending on how we're feeling about things, if we're reading tarot or you're just feeling like you're having tower moment, then attempt become still. Stop the doing. Stop the fixing. Stop the running.
Preach.
Preach. And then, and I would say you're running towards something. You're running away from something. Most people are running away from something.
Yep.
So in that, make that your practice of asking all the questions as part of the act of honesty. Like, what am I doing in my fuckery? What am I doing in my dysfunction? What's and am I the drama?
Oh, honey, am I the villain?
Am I the villain?
You're your own villain era.
Yeah.
Like, you think it's everybody else, but it's really you.
It can be, absolutely. Once we start clarifying, we might start witnessing or noticing the dysfunction in others.
Yes.
And because we've seen it in ourselves. And that's really the point in life where we start to embody compassion, right? For ourselves and for others. You and I talked about that as well. We've talked about that because a lot of my clients in their values will talk about being compassionate, but it'll be for everyone else and not themselves.
Absolutely.
But from my perspective, if we really ground in our own honesty, the compassion starts to really arrive. It's not a performative compassion, right? Yes. At that point, it's a depth of going, oh my God, I've acted totally insane like these people. I can't possibly maintain a sense of anger toward them or annoyance because I've had this within myself. And that's where the compassion comes. That doesn't mean you tolerate it, by the way.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you condone it or allow it in your life. There's lots of people I've said, I love you, but I can't live with you. I can love you unconditionally, but I can't live with you unconditionally. So it doesn't mean that you allow for the things to happen, but it does mean you recognize it. And so, yeah, so I think that if you're in that moment out there and you're really struggling, the thing to do is become still. That doesn't mean you don't do things. For me, becoming still sometimes is cleaning and organizing.
Yeah, that's me. Well, you're so Capricorn. That's so in your sign.
And my Virgo, my Virgo going on.
100%.
So I do something. So going back to the comfort, what can you do right now that will make you comfortable, that will not destroy your life? Right? Like, meaning don't go to drugs or alcohol if you can help it. What can you do right now? So if you're avoiding something, chances are turning toward it is going to be the best thing you can do, but get still in that process.
Yeah.
Right. We have to
And
slow
sit with
down.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
sit with it. Well, that's the default mechanism, right? Of especially people, because most people that you work with are probably type A personalities, overachievers. They want to gain more, be more successful, all those things.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know how you are in this way, but when I start seeing my life falling apart, I almost like feel like the roadrunner. I have to like go faster and start doing more. And it's like, that can actually become the most bamboozlement and fuckery that I can even put myself in, because then you just get tangled up in the bullshit.
Because chances are you missed a step.
Yes.
You missed a step along the way is the reason why things are falling apart. Right. And it could be as simple as date night with your partner.
Yeah.
Right. I need to reconnect to my partner. I need to have date night with them. I need to love on them. I need to take a bath. I need to, for me, if I'm not watching what's going on in my emotions, then that can show up in my body. And then I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm not paying attention here. Or I told myself a story. I was like, oh, I can deal with it. Well, then my emotional body's like, we're angry about this, bitch.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, fine. I'm angry. I'm annoyed. I'm bothered. And so that's when, to your point, I pause and I say, okay, I'm going to sit with this. I'm going to recognize the anger, recognize, where does this come from? What comes from my trauma? It comes from when I was a kid, when I didn't feel like I had control over my life and couldn't choose. And I'm like, wait, I'm an adult now. I can choose, right? I don't need to ignore what's happening.
Yes.
Right. Because in an attempt to disassociate from the intense amount of pain that I'm suffering. So again, it's a big part of the spiritual practice is becoming friends with our process.
Yes. And becoming friends with the demons, right? Because like chilling with them sometimes is the best thing you can do for yourself.
Exactly. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, I don't like demons. So let's define demons. They're dysfunctional behaviors. They're the habits. There's that are dysfunctional, that are working against us. They're the passive aggressive tendencies. They're related to the fear. So, one of my questions constantly for people is, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of?
Yeah.
It's easy. So you can pause in your moment and you can go, what am I afraid of? Why do I feel like I have to fix this? Because the fear is, well, if I don't fix it, then it's going to be bad. But sometimes it's not about the fixing. Sometimes it's about recognizing what's going on and dropping it.
Yes.
Sometimes there is nothing to fix.
Absolutely. 100%. And that's the thing is, I really, really, really suggest in all of the things that I do is, you call it shadow play, but people know it better as shadow work. But I think I think we need to bring shadow play. I think we need to make that the word instead of the shadow work, because it just sounds better.
I like it better.
But people don't want to do that work, Christian. And that's really a problem.
Well, and that goes back to the pain. I mean, being honest with your fuckery and the behaviors that you've experienced, that maybe you adopted even from your parents, and you've attempted to ignore, and to pause and go, oh my God, I'm doing that. I'm like my parents. I'm like these humans that I really loathed or felt did me harm, and I'm doing the same harm to myself or to others. I come from a lineage of women who were abused, and they've just perpetuated it.
Yes.
And I'm constantly like, how could you let your mother, or how could you allow your mother to still live in you and do those things and not see it for what it is?
Right.
Going all the way back, to my great grandmother, my great great grandmother, I'm like, they perpetuated it. So to their children, they treated the same way their parents taught them. Mm-hmm. And I get it. You only know what you know, or you learn what you learn. But again, going back to the self-awareness of the spiritual journey, we have to pause, and you don't have to do anything, but it certainly benefits us to go, what the fuck am I doing? And why
I say that
am
like
I doing
1,000
it?
times a day.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, some people say like the whole, what would Jesus do? And I'm just like, what would you do? Like, if you weren't under the influence of all this junk. So yeah, I think the shadow work, sometimes, to put it a different way, is we go into the attic and we go into the basement and we clear the clutter.
Yeah.
You know,
I love
and
that.
there's junk down there. There's, there's potentially, raccoons and squirrels and shit have built their nests in your head.
Yes.
So you got to go clean out the shit, literally.
Absolutely.
You
Now,
know?
I have another question for you because I love to talk to
Yeah.
my peer groups about this type of stuff. Do
Yeah.
you feel like you have sensed or witnessed lately that people's entire identity is in their healing? Like they always feel like they have to be healing something
Yeah.
and healing something and healing something. And do
Yeah.
you, so A, do you see that? And B, do you think it's like always the best thing?
Yes, to the first question, I see it. And second, is it always no? We don't use the bathroom and then go test our urine or our shit all the time, right? We're not going, let me go and look at this.
I need a fecal sample.
Exactly. Like, I mean, so it's kind of like constantly getting fecal samples. And I think it's a way of, if you want to call it the ego or the shadow side or whatever, perpetuating the pain body, as Eckhart Tolle might even say, of perpetuating itself. So part of healing involves looking at the stuff, but research has shown that self-reflection can quickly become brooding, and the brooding is the unhealthy side of self-reflection. Same with bitching. Bitching to me is different than complaining. If we need to get it out, if we're impacted by something, telling somebody close to you or a therapist or somebody how you feel about something and how it's impacting you and getting it out is different than constantly pointing out what's wrong with your life.
Hallelujah.
And so there's two different things, and not a lot of people talk about this. Just because you need to bitch about something doesn't mean you're not grateful for your life. It means I feel emotionally impacted by something and I need to verbally process it.
Yes.
And so you process it and then you move on. Then you decide, what can I do about it? If I can do something about it, I will. If I can't, then I'm going to accept it and do something else. Redirect my focus. So that's the bitching part of it. The complaining part of the brooding part goes back to the constant healing part. This happened to me. And it's the perpetuating of the victim nature, which I don't judge. I think the brooding part is part of the process to recognize when we're stuck in the loop.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people are capitalizing off of their dysfunction and unaware that they're in the dysfunction. So, part of the healing process also is the oversharing, sometimes going to that extreme. And so I think the need to heal can become a hungry ghost, to use a Buddhist term.
Yes.
And so we constantly become a walking black hole for that. So it goes back to the deficit. How can I be healed? And we are on a journey and we are in a process, and there's always something. There's maintenance in this life. So part of it is, so the assumption here is that there's an arrival point. And self-actualization, and this is based in a lot of research, is not an arrival. Self-actualization is a lived experience where we are perpetually maintaining through a sense of vigilance, not hypervigilance, but let's say just awareness or consciousness of fine-tuning our process. An artist is going to learn how to paint or draw or sculpt and practice that. So they don't go, they might say, I need to perfect this, but perfecting healing is a different thing.
Yes.
Because healing points in our mind and our bodies points to patterns. So it's a recognition factor, really. And the root of the word healing means whole. And the root of the word trauma means wound. But in our brains, when we have a wound in our body, it's a cut, right? Usually, or an infection. So there's a way to bring that back together. In our minds is a pattern that repeats. So it's a hamster wheel.
Yes.
So it's about recognizing we're on the wheel and stepping off. And if we want to talk about it, that's great. That's fine. Healing journeys are great. There's a lot of people that need the affirmation of people seeing that. A lot of people capitalize off of it. But I think there's a difference between playing the victim and then telling your story for the sake of supporting others and contributing to the world.
Oh my God, you said it.
Yeah.
You said it.
Yeah.
There's a song by Tony Jones. I don't know if you know who Tony Jones is. She's a singer, but she does a spoken word spiritual stuff. I can send you some of her stuff.
I think so. Yeah.
She's amazing. But one of her songs, she has two songs, and one is "Healing Is Not My Purpose."
Yeah. No.
And I freaking love that song because it's so true. Like we think like once you go on this healing journey, like my purpose is to heal, and they don't understand that healing happens in layers and it's not linear, and it's going to take a whole lifetime. And who even knows what happens after we shuffle off this mortal coil? And the second song is being real is the new fake. So all these people
Yeah.
on Instagram and on social that are like, I'm so real. I'm going to tell you my real raw story. It's like you said, they're capitalizing on being
It's performative.
It's performative.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that swept the spiritual community now is all this performative bullshit.
Well, and what frustrates me about it, and I talk about this a lot, is a lot of my stuff gets stolen. My quotes get stolen.
Always.
I know you've seen them. I know a lot of my friends send me things, and they even send me things. They're like, "Isn't this yours?"
I always tag you.
Well,
every time I share.
And I don't mind, and I don't mind the memes, whatever, fine. But like when it's my literal quote, when it's my literal tweet, and other people are putting their name on it, it gets a little frustrating. Even like, I mean, I find that to be a little disconcerting when people do that. But it happens in the spiritual community constantly. And this also points to, if we're looking at social media, the constant need to create content and to find content and to maintain a sense of relevancy. And I think people really just aren't up to the task. I think there are a lot of humans out there that just are not innately a fountain of creativity.
Do you take breaks from social?
I did this summer while I was working on my second book because it was really difficult for me to maintain it. Plus, as we discussed earlier, privately, but I don't care if people know, this summer there were a lot of things to do, right? There was a lot of family, there was a lot going on. So I was not as active, here and there, but I'll tell you, I've never approached what I do the same way as other people. I don't compartmentalize it. So for me, social media is a natural part of my life at this point. It's part of my job because it is that's how I find our clients find me. It's how I find great people. So and when I was a textile designer, I also would go home and draw at night and paint and do things for exhibits. And so my life wasn't like, oh, well, I get burnt out. A lot of people use this excuse and it frustrates me because I understand it and I've felt this way before, but I don't let it impede my creativity, is that I don't care that I was at work all day designing. I'm so passionate about what I do that I'm going to keep doing it. And I had a friend the other day say, we were hanging out and he said, well, will you teach me some tarot? And I was like, well, why not? I was like, absolutely. And he was like, well, I just didn't know because it's basically your job. And I didn't know if you needed a separation. And I was like, there is no separation in my life. I'm always a tarot reader. I'm always an astrologer. I'm always, all of it's always there at any given point in time. And I just go to that, that part of me and just pull it out. So I don't mind talking about anything at any given point in time that I'm working on. And social media, I feel the same way. I don't allow social media, let me be very clear about this, and I really would encourage other people to do this, to influence me. I won't, and I do this in my life, by the way. I don't want to anybody's fuckery to be personal. And this goes back to the second agreement. Don't take anything personal.
Yes.
And so it's difficult when people are haters, when they're bullying, when they're doing, which is really what haters are, right? Yep. When it gets difficult when I have to confront somebody, which I had to do this summer, who verbatim basically took one of my quotes and put his name on it. Perfect. And I went to him and I said, listen, this is a chapter in my book. I was like, I shared it with the world through a tweet. I was like, if you would like to share my tweet, please do, but don't put your name on it. That's Absolutely. That lacks integrity from my perspective. And
how was it received? How was that received?
He took it down. He listened to me. He's a writer too. I hope that he would understand, what's going on and so forth. And so, it gets difficult in circumstances like that. And it gets difficult in life when like my book deal falls through. And by the way, that happened on the same day, this summer.
See, so when it rains, it pours, honey.
Yeah. So those things become difficult, but showing up for social media is not. I understand that a lot of people struggle with that, but it's a vehicle. I don't think if you're doing this work right now, you can get around it for very long.
I'm literally jizzing in my pants right now. I know you can't see it, but I am, because I wish you could, because I business coach so many creatives that are like us. They're in the healing world, the spiritual world, whatever. And they're like, I hate making social media things because it's just so overwhelming. And then I batch all my work and I'm like, dude, that's not being an inspired creative. No wonder why you want to put a gun in your mouth every time you fucking open up Instagram, because it's not real shit.
Well, find your balance. I used to batch in the beginning and that worked for me. I've learned that I can't necessarily do that. Why? Because there were a lot of days I had already gotten something prepared and something had happened and it might be off-putting, it might be triggering, and I was like, or it just didn't align with whatever the trend was in that moment. And you have to ride the wave if you're going to maintain a sense of relevancy with it, and you're be willing to adapt, improvise, and overcome, as Bear Grylls says in that meme, And so I had to learn very early on, the first year of this work, and also be providing my intuitive talents, was being flexible, being willing, being adaptable, allowing for things. And so I think that's also difficult for people because social media sometimes asks us to do that. If you're a psychologist or you're making, you're hiring someone to do infographics or things like that, I think that's fine. I think I like to stay on social media, see what people are posting, see what's it provides me content, it provides me with inspiration. I would say it's probably about 3 hours a day. A lot of people know that's a lot, but it's part of my job.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I write, I do sessions, and I'm on social media. And again, I was inspired to do this. Also, I asked, by the way, before we talked about how did the Country Clairvoyant and Country Clairvoyant came to be in the beginning. Well, I wanted a platform. And so actually about 8 months before, I had worked really hard on another platform and posted every day and did things, and it didn't go anywhere. I got 1,000 followers. Well, in the first month of posting Beginner's Luck, by the way, the Country Clairvoyant, I had 10,000 followers.
Crazy. And
so now I also had hit it really hard, as some people know this story, with it. And, but, I think it's difficult. If you have kids, there are some people I know and I have friends that just aren't inspired by social media. Don't force it.
Right.
But I think find your groove in it, and I think people too aren't used to being so creative on it and having to. And again, I'm like, how can I look at something from a different perspective, right? How can I look at the trauma from it? How can you make trauma funny? That's hard, by the way.
It is so hard.
I mean, it's really hard to be like, because it's even difficult to make spiritual things because people hold them so close, right? It's so precious to them. And so it's very difficult for that sometimes, but it's changing. And I'm at the forefront of the change and I'm here for it. I want to continue it. And I think that for those that are struggling with social media, again, find what works for you. Again, I don't take breaks because my creativity slows down. I lose momentum. Clients don't come, even regulars. It's so bizarre. It's like the universe is
out of sight, out of mind, energetically.
Yeah. And it's like the universe is like, you have to maintain this.
Yes.
And again, when I did a lot of research as an author and realizing publishers really don't support your agents and that don't really support you the way that they used to.
Absolutely.
I think that's because of also just resources. There are so many writers now. There's so many people, performers and things like this doing work that, it's difficult. You have to become your own PR firm, as you know,
absolutely.
Right? And you have to be willing to step in front of people and show all your pieces, and show your work. That's my big thing right now. And a really small part of the process of the second book I was working on. I thought I was going to write like this power of now book, right? Or whatever, like to your point, rather boring, just like throwing out the information, like, kind of robotic even. And I've written lots of sections of it. So when the publisher arrived, I was like, yeah, I've got something. So I sent it to him. He's like, oh, this is like everything out there. He's like, you're more unique. He's like, he's like, I want it dripping with Christian is how he said it, which tickled me.
Yes.
So I was like, so I said to him, I said, okay, I need 3 weeks. Give me 3 weeks. And I've got to sit on this. I think it actually took me 4 weeks, but I was going away for a week. And again, I think there was company coming another week. So it was this lot going on. So what I sat with it, I said, how do I write this? And what came through was show your work.
Yes.
I've noticed a lot of people on Instagram. So going back to the healers and all this, if we want to talk about the superficial quality really quick for a moment in this direction, is I noticed a lot of artists. So I was told at a very young age as an artist, don't show incomplete work. But the millennials want to see the work. Younger generations want to know, how the fuck did you arrive here, right? How did you get to be this person?
Yes.
And in our case, how did you discover your wisdom? How did you embody it? How did you connect and even overcome your trauma, which I would say I haven't overcome it. It still shows up. But there are days I'm more confident and days that I'm not. And I keep having to return to my tools, right? Like we talked about earlier. But in the case of this story, number one, I had to adapt. I asked the book how it wanted to come through me. That was number one. And then the second thing I did is, what the voice that I heard was show your work. So I was like, I've got to talk about my spiritual practice. I've got to talk about my insecurities. I've got to talk about how I've used the humor to overcome these insecurities and speak it in a language that people who connect with memes can understand as well. And so all of this came through me. So one thing I found in the spiritual community, talking about the healers and stuff, is, and there is show your work. Now, I feel like a lot of these people are trying to do this, and what they're really just doing, oversharing and becoming the victim narrative, right? And for me, it's like, okay, what do I want to share and show? Because I'm willing to tell my story. I've been in the ditch, right? I've been killed by life many times, right? And resurrected and all these different things, as many of us have. And so I was like, okay, let's talk about these processes. Let's talk. It's a lived in experience. And I don't think I could be doing this work if I hadn't lived it. And the other thing about a lot of these people out there is they haven't lived it. They've read a book, they've read some books, and they haven't really gone. It's speaking of Scorpio season here and talking about diving deep. I say go deep, right? Go deep. When I say go deep, I mean go deep. And as I said recently in one of my tweets was, and the safe word here is don't stop. And so you want to get past the superficiality, and social media is very easy to be superficial, to be a curator, to show up in that space. And people, of course, are afraid of being seen, that their imperfections are going to be seen because they haven't arrived yet. So they'll put off the facade of arrival, but there is no fucking arrival.
Nope.
Actualization is every day waking up and making the choice to live out of your integrity, regardless of what other people say or do. That is actualization.
I'm having a full-blown seizure right now. I'm having a grand mal seizure because this is like fucking gold dripping off of your tongue with like rubies and diamonds and like, I don't even know what. And all these people that go and they're like, I'm a life coach. I took a life coach certification. It's like, your fucking life is legit, not to be rude, but your life is trash. You have no reason to tell anyone anything about anything just because you have a certification.
And if it's trash, then turn it into treasure. That's part of the process. That's the work. It's difficult just to learn. And then you become a parrot. You regurgitate. Be a
spiritual raccoon. Turn your trash into trash.
That's exactly. That's my philosophy.
Please do a meme about that. Be a spiritual raccoon. Turn your trash into treasure.
I can definitely do that. So we want to, if your life is trash, that there's no judgment. But we want to be. I always say this: we are better practitioners when we are honest with ourselves in the work we're doing here. and with ourselves first and foremost, and then we can carry that forward. And so
And
again,
you're going to attract more clients when you're being your most authentic self and not being authentic to be authentic, just being who you truly are.
well, I don't know if that's true, but
Really?
I will say this. I will say this. You might not attract them simply because people might not be ready for that level of
Mm-hmm.
honesty.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll say this. You are going to draw to you the perfect clients.
I love that. That's the most important thing, right?
I think so. Okay. So I could have a lot more clients. In the beginning, I got the people who were wanting to find their twin flame, or who really were very immature in their approach, like law of attraction, junk,
Yes.
all of those things. And it was difficult because those clients did not want to hear what I had to say. They came to me wanting to get the answer that they wanted to hear.
We call
So
that baby witch shit and ambitious.
it
So I'm
is.
like,
It
stop
is.
doing the baby witch shit. No one cares
Yeah.
about your moon water and your crystals and your yoni.
Yeah.
Like, let's do the real work.
Well, and you can have fun with that. Ritual is fine. If you're an earth sign, you're going to want the ritual.
Yes.
But let's be clear on why we're doing it, and what the purpose behind it is. Because, by the way, your purpose is your purpose. Either your purpose is your purpose. Whatever. It doesn't have to be one thing. It is being purposeful. So the deal here is this: is that I said, I want clients who are a little bit further along the path, please. I was like, I'm drawing to me a lot of humans that just want the answers that they want, who are also grieving, right? And something, right? In their life, and they can't get over it, all that stuff. And I still get clients like that. I still grieve things. I was 4 years grieving after after a 5-year relationship, so I get grief or whatever. The point is this, though, is that I was willing to be honest about how I felt about all of it and just show up with it. And so I wanted clients who were in that space, who were like, okay, I want to know what I need clarity on this. What's coming through? Instead of setting up the expectation and going, I need to know what I want to know.
Yes.
Based on this formulaic vision within my head, so that I feel safe.
Yep.
I don't want you to challenge the comfort, right? I don't want you to take me to the edge of the comfort zone and peer off of it. I want you to give me something that's going to give me self-soothing vibes. And I was like, well, we can find the clarity, and through the clarity, we can find the comfort. But where you are right now is just complacent, right? Really, the comfort zone becomes the complacent zone, right?
Yep.
So, so for me, it was in the drawing of the clients, it did shift it. So I get many clients who've been on this path for a long time. They've had, the many synchronicities. They've had the aha moments. They've had it, and they oftentimes just hit a bit of a snag.
That's when I came to you. I was like at this impasse where I was like, I usually can figure this out on my own, but I like really vibe with him, and I'm like, I think he can really help me. And you know me, I was not looking for comfort.
No. And I love that when I get clients who do not want the comfort either. They want they want the reality of what comes. They don't want the birthday cake. They don't want the treat. What they want is they want the ingredients to continue, or to me, I don't even give them the ingredients. All I do is I say, okay, you have this going on, you have this going on, you have this going on. Let's look at the ingredients and how can we make the cake?
Yes.
Right? Like, what can we do about it? And the before clients were like, I just want the fucking cake. I don't want to do anything about it. And I was like, no, that's not how this works, because we're creative beings. Yeah. Now I'm not saying you can't manifest something and it just shows up on your doorstep, because
Absolutely.
that has happened in my life, and it happened for other humans that I know. Here's the deal. That tends to be rare for most humans. You don't manifest something and it just happens. Most of the time, I didn't manifest 70,000 followers on Instagram that's continuing to grow. What I did is I made a choice many years ago to say, okay, I want to do this spiritual work and I want to offer something to the world. And so I'm going to contribute of myself to this. And in the contribution, there is the creative momentum that takes place.
Yes.
And so that's what we're doing here. We're creating. And so, anyone who's out there who's kind of stuck, it's going to be important to look at what you've already created, what you've been working on. What do you love? What do you want to do? And then move in that direction, instead of saying, what's the world going to give me? Which is a trauma reaction.
Absolutely.
I'm afraid to put myself out there. I'm afraid to go create. I'm afraid to be on social media. All of it, a lot of it comes down to that. I have a good friend of mine. She won't mind if I say this. I would say, you're amazing on camera. You need to show your face more. And it keep getting tickled, because more and more, like, the energy's pushing her in that direction. And I'm like, you just have such a brilliant energy about you. And by the way, it's been pushing me in that direction as well. So I saw it in her, and we're kind of tandem in our development in a lot of ways. So what's really fabulous about it is we'll get those hits, right? And we'll be moving in the direction. So, I resist it too. We all resist it. We all do it, but be clear about it, right? We want to be clear about it. And if you want what you want, then you got to do something about it.
So
right?
true. And where did Cunty come from? Was it Cunty? Cunty came from everyone loves Cunty, by the way.
So let's
talk about Country Clairvoyant.
Cunty. So Cunty was really an inspired character. I have a handful of characters, but she was one that came through at the beginning of doing it. So I did a lot of videos with her. It was a little scary to do, but it wasn't intended as a jab. It wasn't intended for her to be sarcastic around anything, although it is satire. But very early on in my account, as I touched on earlier, is I was really tired of this constant bombardment of the love and light, this constant bypassing, as people say, which, in saying no one can really bypass you. People bypass themselves, and then they bring that to the table. So don't bypass yourself ever, right? Which is to say, don't allow other people to say things to you to influence your personal bypassing. They'll try to bypass you, though, definitely. But they're just not accessing something within themselves when they do that. So that's what I kept seeing, is there wasn't this depth. There were people who were spouting depth, right? Going back to the healing modalities and the very superficial humans. And so I was just like, well, I had just broken up with a friend, by the way, not a boyfriend. It wasn't a relationship like that. It was just a friend. And she was a Gemini and really Looney Tunes. I mean, she really was, which is why I was like, I have to stop this. Lied a lot and just took on these airs and put on these airs and just a lot of just insanity. So what I ended up, and so Cunty kind of grew out of amalgamation of people I knew and people I had known, because by the time I started my account, for people that don't know, I had already been in the spiritual space for over 20 years.
Yes.
It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to show up and, I'm going to do this. I had already been living it for a long time, relatively speaking, for someone who was young, in my late 30s. And so I was like, you know what? I'm tired of the holding space thing, and I'm tired of all these words that become the word salad. So let's look at them from a different perspective. So my first Cunty video was like, I'm holding space for you on this plate. And I need to repost that video because it's one of my favorites.
Please.
And she's like, this is where you get to hold, this is how I hold space for you. And so that's what she's like, talking about. So I took this jargon, right? The word salad jargon, and started to, and really through an inspired action, I was truly inspired by it and giggled and all that stuff. And what really sucks is my phone ran out of storage. Because you didn't have the option to put it in the cloud at that point yet. And so and I deleted videos I thought I had, and I lost so much Cunty content. I know. I was so sad. And so, but I'm still, of course, making it, as you know. But yeah, so she really grew out of this, like, really a human who is dangerously aware, but dangerously unaware at the same time. And I find that happens a lot within the community, is there's a lot of these very profound concepts that people don't really get. So they're aware of the concepts. They can understand them on an intellectual level, but to our point before, it's not always lived, and it becomes that very surface level experience. And so they go out and they talk about it, and they might have some really insightful, beautiful things to say, but again, there's a lot of parroting. There's a big account, I won't say who they are, that's a psychologist, and from my perspective, she parrots everything. She got big from parroting.
Yes.
And that's not to say that she hasn't suffered or lived certain things or understands what she's saying. But I want to be clear that my whole purpose here, I feel like, or part of my purpose or what I'm doing, is to offer the lived experience. And that, because that's what we're doing. We're living here. Why? And again, going back to Christianity or even other spiritual traditions, well, this is just a stop on the way to heaven. And I think that's bullshit. Mm-hmm. I don't see that as part of, it doesn't make any sense to me. If energy is neither creative nor destroyed,
yes,
then why do we just go to some heaven place and just spend our life? I think people get so bored. You take a human and you give them everything they want and their need, and if they are still stuck in their trauma, they will sabotage it.
Boring. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be like, I need drama. Now, if they're healthy, they channel it into more exciting things like being adventurous, painting, artistic, creative things, contributing. This is what I do. Contributing creative things to the world. They channel in more healthy avenues. But most humans don't do this, I find. Most humans, they get comfortable and they're like, I have to light this on fire because I need to become a phoenix again.
Oh my God, it's so true. I see it all the freaking time, dude. I'm like, she's doing it again. She's doing it again.
Yeah, they're like, wait, I'm not in the dumpster fire. I need to go and make a dumpster fire again so I can become the dumpster fire phoenix, which is one of the things that keeps getting stolen, by the way, by me.
I love the dumpster fire phoenix. It's my favorite.
So, I think we come here for the excitement of being here. But at the same point in time, I think we come here to learn to channel that excitement in healthier ways, and to do no harm if we can help it, which most people can't do.
Nope.
Most people help the world and also harm the world. I don't think Amazon is necessarily, it's been helpful to a lot of people, but it's also been horrible in many ways.
Yes.
So these things, we walk the double-edged sword. So I think in the spiritual community, though, we can manage to create platforms and to support humans in their creative expression without the harm.
Yes, I agree. So can you, because you are who you are, could you give like a kind of like a roundabout like mass reading of like what you feel intuitively is going to be like our 2023? Like, what do you think is coming down the pipeline for all of us? Because the last 2 years have been dumpster fire phoenix energy vibes. Yeah.
Well, and that's, again, going back to people want to light themselves on fire in order to, rise from the ashes. So my perception or my feeling around it is this. Gemini, the biggest thing astrologically, I think, one of the big things, there's been a lot of heavy astrology going.
Yes.
A lot of butting heads, Saturn, Uranus in a square, Saturn and Pluto coming together at the beginning of 2020, which of course, dismantled a lot of things through COVID and many other things. I mean, there's just been a lot of very strong aspects going on with some heavy hitters and related to the collective, right? So we've got Mars in Gemini. Mars is considered a personal planet of action, planet even of sex and sexuality, even. It's the old ruler of Scorpio. Well, it's moved into Gemini. So I think what's going to happen is this is going to expose people's crazy, including our own, in the retrograde, to be aware of how we are operating out of alignment with ourselves. Because it's Gemini, it's the twins, right? Yes. And they're ultimately in alignment with each other. But an unintegrated Gemini is out of alignment. And it's funny we were talking about this because I talked about my ex-Gemini friend.
Yes.
So, I think it's an opportunity to act in alignment with our values and have those, how do we act in alignment with values? We'll behave in that fashion. So I think it'll expose where we feel insane within ourselves. Those things might be showing up. The cognitive dissonance, we'll call it that, I think will be a thing. And that's already happening, right? Because we're seeing these big humans who regardless of what you think about student loan forgiveness, you're seeing these big time people come out who got the PPP loans through COVID, speaking of that, who had millions of dollars through it, by the way, forgiven by the government, who are really upset for giving the student loans, right? And so to me, that's cognitively dissonant. It's like, why are you special? Why do you get the loan forgiveness and other people don't?
Yes.
And so, you know, and I don't care what you think about it either way. My thought is if you think you should be special and no one else should be, then we need to look at that. Right. So I think, and that's true for all of us, right? Because I say nobody's special. Right. Because if everybody's special, nobody's special.
Absolutely.
So we're all unique. We all have different fingerprints, and that's more than just on our hands, right? We all have something unique to give the world, and through our own filters and things like that, if we choose to develop it. But nobody's special. So I think what it'll do, I think that will continue to be exposed. The cognitive dissonance, the conflict, the passive aggressiveness in the world, I think is a big thing that'll be exposed as well, that'll continue on. So again, in your personal life, you know, for those that are listening, we want to look at it there, because the only way we resolve it collectively is on a personal level.
Right.
There will continue to be, you know, the civil unrest, and the Mars and Gemini will probably expose more and more of the division between people and their perspectives and all of those things, and how people think they're different. But really, there's an opportunity here to see how the differences again make us the same. It fascinates me. The thing I've found about humans is everyone wants to be loved. Everyone's comfort. Everyone wants their baseline needs met. Everyone wants connection. Everyone wants belonging. I have not found anyone who doesn't want all of these things. And so, but we set up so many barriers between each other within those things. They go, well, that's the wrong way to want comfort. That's the wrong way to want belonging. That's the wrong way to express yourself. And policing that it lacks usefulness. So I think we're at an opportunity here to drop that. Right?
I agree with you.
And also, even though we talk about, you know, these humans who are expressing themselves online and doing anything, my thought is this: the only thing that I struggle with about that is if you have a coach that took a life coaching class, is the not lived in. So there's a real chance, and someone who's not trauma informed, someone who's not aware of the nuance of your clients and what's going on, is something I struggle with. So, you know, I think there will be a continued opportunity to look at the nuances of how we operate as humans, and as practitioners bring that into our practice.
I love that. Such freaking good advice. So Christian, where can all of the Ambitchious from all across the globe find you? So give us all the things. All of this will also be in the show notes, guys. Okay. So
website christianbwest.com or the countryclairvoyant.com. It takes you to the same place. You can Google my name, Christian Bradley West. You will find me when you Google my name. There's a handful of pages to Google. Sadly, a bunch of articles that were written about me in my art year, I think are no longer out there, but there's a few. So you can see past life me. I still make art and stuff. On Instagram, the Country Clairvoyant. On Twitter, Christian Bradley West, or Christian B West. I think it's Christian B West, but still Google Christian Bradley West Twitter and you'll find me. All those things. And I'm going to teach a class in January, which I'll be posting in the next couple of weeks that people can start signing up for, on the spiritual journey and trauma, and how trauma and the spiritual journey really are related, and how we can understand their trauma better to fuel our awakening and our awareness in our life, and heal some of that passive aggressive tendencies, the cognitive dissonance within us, and really the issues we might have with internalized authority and things like that. So we're going to go through all of those things in the class. So
that's exciting. That's exciting. Oh my God. Yeah. Keep bringing all the good Country Clairvoyant stuff, because you know, it tickles my freaking fancy.
Yay,
I love it. I love it. All my HBICs love it too.
Good.
Christian, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy life and being here. And ladies, check out Christian. He is the best ever. And I'm saying that in my Boston accent. Ever.
I'm here for it. Thank you.
In the meantime, don't forget to stay ambitious, and I will see you next Tuesday.